Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Kellam, welcoming you to this week's edition of Encounter. As it says there on the screen, I'm the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. I can barely read it from here. Welcome to this week's program. We're going to be talking about what the right-wing media call the illegals, or asylum seekers, or immigrants, or migrants, or strangers. We're going to be talking about some of the issues at the border and with someone who has been there and can tell us firsthand about some of the experiences he's had. I was interested in looking at what the Bible says about welcoming strangers, no matter what the borders are. And I went to my trusty phone and said, tell me what the Bible says about welcoming strangers. Leviticus 19, you shall not mistreat a stranger who dwells with you in your land. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Deuteronomy, love you therefore the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. 1 Peter 4:9 from the New Testament, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Hebrews 13:2, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. And then in Matthew 25, I was a stranger, you invited me in. That's what people of faith proclaim about welcoming people. We know it's a complicated issue, so complicated it's difficult for us to separate the issues of government and what's going on in Washington with what's going on at the border, but we're dealing with human beings, and today I welcome another human being. This is David Rustin, who is considers himself a missionary from the United Presbyterian Church in Binghamton, the other UPC. I'm at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. Mm-hmm. You are just back from the Southwest. Tell me what you were doing there this time, and then we'll talk a little bit about your background and about your ministry.
So on this trip, we had some personal issues to take care of in Tucson, getting our winter home set up. But we went out with the Tucson Samaritans, which is a volunteer group in Tucson. And their mission is to provide humanitarian aid to migrants crossing the Sonoran Desert. And they do that in a variety of ways. It's basically loading up in a four-wheel drive Toyota Tundra and going out and driving amongst the thousands and thousands of acres of desert between Tucson and the border, which is about 70 miles. And we look for migrant trails, active migrant trails where people are traveling. And we put gallons of water along the trails in strategic places to where they'll be able to get water. Right. Every year, over 200 people die in the desert attempting to make that crossing in southern Arizona. So the Tucson Samaritans have a mission to try to save lives and keep people from dying. They're not interested in the politics necessarily or everything. It's simply they value human life, and they don't want to see people dying. That was our primary mission. Our secondary is we visit a little town in Mexico called Sasabe. It's right on the border. There's a welcome center that was established in Sasabe by two Tucson Samaritans, and it was developed because of a policy a few years ago in which our government decided to deport people by the busloads to this little town that had no services whatsoever. There was no way for anybody to get a bus ticket back home or anything else. They basically became material for the cartel to provide. The cartel would provide them services, transportation or what have you, and of course they charged for it.
Yeah.
So these two women started this small little center where they can provide people with a meal and a shower and maybe help them get back home to wherever, maybe Guatemala or Ecuador or wherever they might have come from.
Yeah.
So that was our two primary focuses. My husband and I go together, and so we go out and we we did a trip in the desert where we put out 40 gallons of water at different locations, and Tucson Samaritans have been doing this for over 20 years.
Yeah. Isn't it illegal?
It is not illegal. Actually, people have been arrested for it in the past. There's been over 40 cases over the years, and they've determined that providing humanitarian aid cannot be illegal.
Right.
No one can be, so all the charges have been dropped over the years, and nobody's gone to jail necessarily for putting water in the desert or stayed in jail. They may have spent an overnight or something. But,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you used the term migrants.
Right.
You know, I always thought, having been in Virginia for many, many years, we talked about the migrants who came to the eastern shore to harvest peanuts and so on and do farm work.
Mm-hmm.
Migrants I picture as going from place to place to do work. It certainly is akin to the word immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these folks?
Well, so there's probably 100 answers to that, but
It's early in the program. We have lots of time.
Good. So for decades, migrants have been flowing back and forth across the southern border to do all the agricultural work in the Southwest and in California, and now all over the country. So as I understand it right now, there's approximately 11 million undocumented workers in the United States. These are the migrants coming back and forth to work. That's the way I look at it. They're traveling back and forth to work. They come up here, they can find work, they get work, they send money back home to support their families, and they may return. They don't necessarily come up, they don't want to necessarily live in the United States. They're coming up here to support their family.
Right.
Now there's a second batch, I'll call, of asylum seekers. These people are from all over the world. I saw hundreds of people from Africa in a center that's in Tucson, Arizona, that's processing asylum seekers, but they all come up through Mexico.
Right.
And come across the border or present themselves at the border.
So they've have the resources to fly from Africa to Mexico and then come up by foot or bus.
I think bus or train.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding it's all cartel run. It's a kind of, let's call it a cartel travel agency that recruits these people in Africa or finds these people and then helps them get to Nicaragua is one of the most common countries where they come into Central America and then they come up through from Central America.
Right.
And in Tucson, they're processing, hundreds of these people a day, asylum seekers that are fleeing war or fleeing. I can't keep up with all the global issues that they're dealing with.
Yeah. There are certainly international issues, but the national issue for many folks is folks coming into the country, overwhelming the system, and part of the governmental issue, I would think, is improving the system. And my heart goes out to these folks who are fleeing often just unconscionable criminal systems and danger, bringing their families in and so on. And a part of the suspicion, of course, again, I cannot bring myself to listen to some talk shows, but part of the issue is that we're so afraid of the stranger. We're so afraid of what these folks are going to bring or do or whatever. But nonetheless, there's a humanitarian crisis here. And you found ways in which to network with folks to bring about at least some degree of help.
Right. Yeah, my primary focus, as I said when I got down, was to provide water to somebody that's thirsty.
Yeah.
Really, it's that basic.
Right.
Because they're going to die otherwise,
Yeah.
and they do. And the Tucson Samaritans encounter probably, one person a week that is near death.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for that Tucson Samaritan coming across them in this vast desert,
Yeah.
they would be dead.
Right.
And they may or may not, their remains may or may not be found.
Yeah.
People don't appreciate the size of the desert.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And the size of our country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's vast. And so providing that, but secondary is to help educate people and help people understand kind of what's happening, what's really happening.
Yeah.
Our news just doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
They miss a lot.
Well, and it surfaces when there. I think my suspicion is that when there's a pretty slow news day, suddenly our focus is on the border and the vast numbers of people trying to get into the United States, and then when other things happen like war or something, then that news kind of goes away for a while.
Right.
We assume it must have been fixed.
Right, and as I mentioned before, this migration phenomena has been going on for decades.
Sure.
It's not new.
Right.
We get a new administration, and then people want to hype it up and talk about it and count how many people have come across on a given month or given day or given year, but it doesn't tell the whole story. You got to, one of the things I did this last year was kind of dove deep into Guatemala and trying to understand why people are coming from Guatemala.
Yeah.
And my conclusion was it was the result of the United States and the CIA overthrowing their democratically elected president in 1954, which led to 4 decades of civil war in Guatemala. And this is kind of what's the result of it. There's a lot of corruption in the country, and there's a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of the indigenous people have been marginalized and kind of driven into the mountains and have no method of really providing for themselves, and so they send people up here to earn some money and to keep their families alive.
Yeah. So what led you into this work? You just have a big heart, or what?
Well, it's it's kind of the perfect storm. So I studied 20 years ago. I went to Binghamton University and studied social sciences along with social work. And so I'm interested in why people do what they do, just human behavior. And I also love the outdoors, and I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I don't like the thought that it's dangerous and people are dying because they're walking through a desert. We should be able to prevent that. I like to see problems that we should be able to prevent, and people shouldn't have to die in the desert for lack of water in our country.
Simple.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do what I can to keep people from dying, and I'm going to try to educate and inform people. I'm blessed to have the support of United Presbyterian Church in Binghamton, who have provided us with financial support to go down to Tucson and put water out and do different things to try to keep people from dying.
Right. Now, the radio audience can't see your shirt, but the television audience can. Casa de la Esperanza.
Right. So that translates to House of Hope. And that's what the two women and the Tucson Samaritans formed in Sasabe, Mexico. So it started as providing, emergency services to busloads of migrants being deported there, where there was no food. I mean, they were bringing in cases of food from Tucson to feed these people because there was nothing. They didn't have anything.
Right.
But it's evolved to where now they had the Veterans for Peace build a playground in the community for the children, and they just recently opened up a library for the children in the town that we're helping to support, and I'm hooking them up with a Kindle and a Kindle account so that they can have access to reading material.
Yeah.
And the Kindle makes it easy. You can, share.
You bet. You bet. And you consider yourself a missionary. Ordinarily, you think of a missionary going in and teaching and trying to convert people and that kind of thing. And in what sense is this a mission for you?
Yeah, for me, it's more trying to learn, try to understand the issues. Individually and as a group, what are these issues and how can we help? And how, what governmental policies are leading us to some of these situations that we're into, right. and understanding it. So that's where I consider myself a missionary, more from learning than teaching, I would say, and trying to understand.
Well, mission takes lots of different shapes. It's a variety of calls to various, generally outside of our normal environment, our comfort zone, and you're certainly finding yourself in some pretty uncomfortable places and dealing with people who are so desperate that they've left their homes with not much more than what they can carry on their backs. And sometimes what they're carrying on their backs is a child.
Right, yes. I mean, and we've even encountered groups of children on the border.
Unaccompanied.
Unaccompanied. The method the cartel uses is they come up, they transport these groups of children, and they will find a place where they can get across the border, which is really quite easy and it's not, to me, it would be impossible to block the border. It's so vast and it's mountainous, and the cartel is very resourceful, so any barrier that's put up, they just find a way around it. Yeah. There's always an end to a fence, and they just go around the end. And they will put those children over there and say, wait for Border Patrol to come. And we've encountered groups where the youngest one might be 8 and the oldest one might be 13. And they spend the night in the desert in the middle of nowhere, waiting for someone to come along. And fortunately, the Samaritans are frequently the first ones they'll encounter, and then we will contact Border Patrol and get them assistance that they need. But there are bad actors along the border as well that I call it a competition, but we're full of love, and they're not.
Yeah. Our guest today is David Rustin, who is a member of the United Presbyterian Church in Binghamton, a member also of the Tucson Samaritans. If you go read the story of the Good Samaritan in the Scriptures, read it a little bit more deeply than you have before, and you discover the Samaritan never should have crossed that road to help, but did. And so the message of Jesus was to take care of one another, even if they are strangers to us. David, you have at your feet there some beautiful totes, which again the TV audience can see, but the radio folks can't. And tell me what these are about.
So one of the other projects that these women have started in Sausalbe, Mexico, Sonora, Mexico is the proper Sausalbe, Sonora, Mexico, is they've encouraged these women to get involved and make these, they embroider these handbags, and then we bring them up and sell them up all over the country. People from Tucson take them out and sell them, and it provides a source of income for these women in a little town that has absolutely no industry, no fast food restaurants, nothing. Their only other source of income would be via the cartel.
Right.
And so we're giving an alternative. And I consider each one a work of art.
Yeah,
they're individually embroidered. I saw a woman, one of my fellow Samaritans, had a Wrangler jacket that she got embroidered on the back. Some of these designs, they do the butterflies, they do a lot of desert themes. And so United Presbyterian Church is a place where we sell them in our little Esquina de Esperanza, the corner of hope. We have a little store where we sell the handbags. We have a lending library with a lot of books that I've read about migration issues and that we invite people to borrow. And we have a butterfly project. And I have to talk about the crosses project before I can talk about them.
Sure.
So a gentleman in Tucson by the name of Alvaro Incencio is an artist. And he took it upon himself to attempt to put a cross at the location where migrants have died in the desert. Right. And Pima County Medical Examiner has a map where you can go and look, and there's dots on there, and each red dot represents where they found remains of a migrant. And so Alvaro will hand make a cross, and he puts identifying information on it to identify the individual or a number if they were unidentified. And he places the cross. And every week he goes out and puts 2 or 3 crosses in the desert at places where people have died. And he's put 1,100 crosses out there at this point. And Pima County has over 4,000 documented death sites, but the estimate is there's probably over 10,000 remains in the desert. Yeah. So Alvaro goes out and he says it's where dreams die. And that's his art project, and he's nationally known, internationally known for this project. Right. You can find him online and read his whole story. But so it's quite a moving experience. I've gone out with him and placed the crosses, and it's a ceremony that he goes through, and it's to remember these people that are, to me, they're walking to work and dying, and they're walking to work for us.
Yeah. Yeah, they're doing jobs that we don't want to do.
Right.
Yeah. Who are your allies? Now, you've mentioned the Casa de la Esperanza, and I'm interested in your relationship to the Border Patrol.
So we have a mixed relationship with them. We will have Border Patrol agents that are very happy to see us and tell us that they would much rather find a live person than a dead person.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to come across people dying.
Right.
And so they are happy for what we do. And we have other people that have a way of thinking that somehow because we put water out there, it's going to attract somebody from El Salvador or Guatemala to say, oh, I'm going to go across the desert because they're putting water there. And, it's just, and so they don't necessarily like to see us out there. But we actually, the kind of leaders of the Samaritans have met with top officials in the Border Patrol, and we talk very openly about what we do. We don't break the law. We don't attempt to help anybody. We don't smuggle people in. We don't pick people up and give them rides to Tucson or anything like that. In a medical emergency, we can, but we call Border Patrol.
Yeah.
We contact them at least once a week to come and get somebody that wants to be in their control.
Right. So as you're placing the vessels of water in the desert, have you run across migrants face to face?
Very rarely.
Yeah.
If we come across a migrant face to face, it's because they're in distress. Normally.
Yeah.
That's typical. There are occasions, but it's usually very brief. They might just take a bottle of water or something and go, but we don't really have a lot of interaction with them. I mean, it's a huge desert.
Yeah.
And it's like finding a needle in a haystack to actually find one or see one.
Right. So as we get toward the end of the program, what message do you have for folks who are listening to our conversation, and how can people help?
Well, I'd say, one, learn about the issue. understand what's really happening. Do your own research. Don't rely on the news media to provide you with what's really happening, and understand it. Understanding our history and how we're involved in it, and ways to help. I mean, the education to me is the big key, but also, United Presbyterian Church has a little study center there. You could learn a lot about the issues just by visiting that, and supporting the migrants that are here. Owego Presbyterian Church hosted a dinner for 15 migrant workers that are working in the community. People aren't aware that they're amongst us.
Yeah.
They're working in the dairy farms, they're working in the factories, they're working all over the country, including Broome County.
Yeah.
They aren't, and they're strangers amongst us, and they're on the margins. And
Right.
I come across them because I teach English as a second language on Zoom, and I have some migrant students, and so they should be welcomed and embraced.
Yeah. It is a matter of putting your faith to work and putting, again, politics aside, and looking at some of these folks as our brothers and sisters, particularly those who are coming across the border who are Roman Catholics, who are my brothers and sisters in Christ. Maybe a Presbyterian, they're Catholic, but we still are following Jesus. And so that's why I've always tried to keep an open heart for this and an open mind for the issues involved. And I know it's something that we can't solve right now, but I would hope that someone in Washington would start going to work on fixing the problem. So thanks to you for your work and for being with us on the Encounter program. Is there a website, very quickly?
Yep. So Tucson Samaritans, you can just Google Tucson Samaritans and you could find their website. That gives you a lot of information on what they've done and what they continue to do and ways to support them, as does Casa de la Esperanza have a website. And,
Okay, and so it's www.tucsonsamaritans.org.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I looked it up, so I'm not doing this off the top of my head.
Thanks.
So David Rustin has been our guest today, and I appreciate, again, your coming and sharing part of the story.
I'm very excited to be able to share.
And you'd probably be available if somebody wanted to have you come and talk to a church group or people of faith somewhere.
Certainly, yes.
You're in the area?
Yes.
Okay, and they can
happy.
reach you through the United Presbyterian Church in Binghamton.
Yes.
I want to thank our folks for being with us for this Encounter program as we've talked about migrants and serving those who are caught in this vast desert and giving them the most basic of human needs of water. But then the ministry goes far beyond that as well. I'm Jeff Kellam, thanking you for being with us, and thanks to WBNG TV for the production facilities and for the Town Square Media radio stations for carrying Encounter each week, brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches. I hope to see you again next week. In the meantime, be gentle with people and with yourself.